Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
And we are the FAIRtax Guys, fighting for truth, justice, and to get rid of the income tax.
And the American way.
Yeah, to get rid of the... Yeah, if you saw last week's episode, you saw how un-American, and you could make the case anti-American, that the federal income tax code is, so we need to get rid of that. So fighting for the American way means we want to get rid of the income tax. That works.
And again, I encourage you, when you contact your congressmen or senators about the fair tax, you remind them that the income tax is un-American. Don't be shy about it.
It is. And it was unconstitutional in the original Constitution. They had to pass a constitutional amendment to allow it. So that should be a hint.
By the way, I forgot, in last week's episode when you were doing the Congress.gov and all the crazy proposals to amend, to make the income tax even worse than it is today, they were up again about 9 proposals per day they're in session. They're proposing about 9 new proposals to the tax code every day they're in session. All right. Fortunately, very few of them will become law, but
8.97 of them have a lobbyist behind them.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
But one thing we didn't get to do last episode was your Grassroots Corner report, because we just had so much stuff in Congress.gov, so we'll make sure you get that this time.
Okay. This is the Grassroots Corner for the week ending in June 12th, okay? And it's written by Jim Bennett, who is the Grassroots Director for the Americans for Fair Taxation. And if you have anything of the grassroots nature, a report or a question or whatever, jim.bennett@fairtax.org. And Bennett has 2 N's and 2 T's, okay? This one is entitled, "The Illinois Fair Tax Movement Drifting Towards the Whirlpool," okay? Now, if you haven't heard about this, Governor Fitzger of Illinois is proposing a new tax plan that he's calling a fair tax. And AFFT has been writing to him, say, hey, this is a copyrighted symbol, the fair tax.
Trademark name. You
Trademark
can't do
name.
that.
Yeah, thank you. Yep. And you need to lay off of it. All right. Anyways, the so-called fair tax in Illinois is not the fair tax at all, but a graduated, layered, and progressive state personal income tax. It looks as if the measure is on its way towards a referendum in November. Illinois does have a personal income tax, but it was adopted in 1969, and it's a flat rate. Okay, it goes on to give a little history here. Until the Great Depression, Illinois relied on a statewide property tax for most of its revenue. In 1932, with the finances in disarray because of the Great Depression, the legislature approved a graduated income tax. However, the Illinois Supreme Court struck it down. So they tried again in 1969, and that time they were successful by amending the Constitution. That sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. They were a little bit behind the U.S. government amending the Constitution. Anyways, so they had this 2.5 state income tax and enshrined in the law by the state constitution. Now, that's not good enough for the governor. He wants to make it a graduated and layered income tax. In other words, make it more complicated so that he and the legislature are able to pick winners and losers. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of
course, for their efforts, they have received the notice that Illinois recently ranked 50th among all states, all U.S. states, for fiscal health.
Now, that's dead last, including Hawaii and Alaska.
So I don't think their income tax is helping them. All right. Now Illinois wants to double down on its 1969 mistake and make its personal income tax graduated and layered. Illinois could track away from the whirlpool of graduated, layered, progressive state personal income tax and instead make history by enacting a true state-level fair tax, the real fair tax. Imagine what a powerhouse Illinois would be if it were to beat Alabama, Georgia, and Nebraska, all of which are working on their own state version of the real fair tax. Okay? So that's the grassroots, and it goes on. If you have anything to add, if you're in Illinois and you want to help them out, contact Jim, as I said, jim.bennett@fairtax.org.
Well, that leads right into kind of what we were thinking about doing for this episode. Not everything that's called a fair tax, 2 words, is the fair tax.
That's right.
That's the primary example of it. We got several places around the country that are saying that fair tax, and it's not the fair tax as described in HR 25. So be careful when you hear that word, and make sure that it's not appropriating our trademarked name for something that really isn't the fair tax. And something else that just drives me crazy is how people think the fair tax and the flat tax are basically the same thing. You will hear those 2 words used in the same sentence all the time. We had a candidate trying to sign the Fair Tax Candidates Pledge.
That's right.
Says, yeah, I'm for this or the flat tax, as if they're interchangeable, and they are as different as night and day.
Absolutely.
What is the primary difference between the fair tax and the flat tax?
The fair tax is a consumption tax, a sales tax collected at the point of sale, and a flat tax is still an income tax. Okay.
Yeah, that's what Illinois started out with, right?
Yeah. And anyways, and it made a mess for them, and now they're just trying to make it worse. But it's especially true at the national level too. The income tax, I mean, it's got a huge bureaucracy, right? They have empowered or authorized that bureaucracy, the IRS, all right, which is responsible for the virus, all right? The IRS is allowed to ignore the Bill of Rights. You know what? That's crazy.
That's un-American.
That's un-American. So, but getting back to Bob's point here, you see people in the media, sometimes the print media, sometimes on TV, oh yeah, a flat or a fair tax, as Bob said, as if they're interchangeable. They're not. They're as different as night and day. I mean,
yes, flat tax still retains the IRS, still retains tax returns, still retains withholding, still retains payroll taxes, and it's just messing around on the perimeter without really fundamentally changing the system. It's what the flat tax is, and it was flattened out in 1986.
Yeah, it was, and look at the mess we have now.
Look at what we've got now. So
it's almost 3 times as large.
So to think that the flat tax and the fair tax are anywhere near related is just not happening.
And
not true.
The people in the media should know better, all right? They're supposed to do their research. They're supposed to know the difference between the fair tax and the flat tax. But like Bob said, they use it interchangeably as if they're the same. No, they're not.
And you hear people say, well, the flat tax will get rid of the IRS. The flat tax will not get rid of the IRS. It will still a tax on income. It still has to be enforced and administered, and it's going to start changing the day the ink is dry on the first thing. That is, what do you call that? The lobbyist continual employment plan for
absolutely
next 2 decades.
Job security for lobbyists, because the lobbyists love the idea of a flat tax because they get to go to work all over again, start from scratch.
Yeah,
right?
They get to rebuy all of the stuff that went away and make millions more money doing that. So flat tax. Bad idea. It's still an income tax. Get rid of it. Now, we're going to have some fun with this.
Yeah.
There are lots of misinformation, myths, what have you, about the fair tax. And so we're going to be the Mythbusters.
Yeah.
Now, I kind of like the Mythbusters that get to blow up things. You see them on television. They can do some really, really fantastic stuff. But we've got some myths and some misconceptions that are often bandied around about the fair tax. And we'll just kind of switch off, throwing these at each other.
Sure.
And I'm going to throw the first one at you. You ready?
Okay.
The fair tax is going to make everything I buy 23% more expensive. I can't afford that.
Oh, that's terrible. It's also wrong. So, anyways, yes, the fair tax is a 23% tax at the point of sale. But keep in mind that it gets rid of the corporate tax, all right? The fair tax is only collected at the point of sale. It is not collected at the corporate level, or there's no personal income tax and so forth. So it makes the business of doing business much less expensive. So that means that products will cost less. Oh, well, the corporations will just keep their money. They won't pass it on. Hey, in what universe do these corporations live in? Okay, there's such a thing as competition. Believe me, competition is good. Now, competition will work during the fair tax, and it will keep all the corporations honest. honest, if they want to stay in business, okay? So, no, it will not cost 23% more. Cost of doing business is going to come way down. You're going to get your entire paycheck. When you balance out the fact that the cost of doing business and the cost of products comes down, and you're going to get your entire paycheck and so forth, all right, there's going to be, not only are things going to cost maybe 10 to 12% more, but you're going to have actually more purchasing power. So that is a myth. Things are not going to go up 23%, all right, because of it'll lower the cost of doing business.
Yes, and actually it makes the tax base much wider than it is now.
There you go.
So when you widen the tax base, then usually each individual share of the overall thing goes down. So you should pay a lot less, and a lot of people will pay less fair tax than the current they're paying in current income tax. So there
Okay. Next one.
Yes.
Oh, but a sales tax is regressive. The fair tax is just another scheme for the rich, and it'll hurt the poor.
Wrong-o, Kimosabe. Well, I take that back. You're half right. Sales taxes, as they are generally implemented, are indeed regressive, meaning that they take the same percentage from everybody. The Florida state sales tax here that we're familiar with, 7%.
Yeah.
Now, some counties have added on to that, but generally it's 7%. And it's 7% whether you make, $500,000 a year, and it's 7% whether you make $50,000 a year. It takes the same amount from everybody. That, by definition, is what regressive is all about.
That's right.
But the fair tax has a provision in there that fixes that. We've talked about it a lot. It's called the prebate. What it means is that you are allowed to spend up to the poverty level for your household size tax free. Now, you will pay the tax at the cash register. It is reimbursed to you by the prebate, which for a family of four is a little over $600 a month, and that's not exactly chump change. But you get back the taxes you pay on your basic necessities, and you decide what your basic necessities are. There aren't any exemptions, no politicians trying to go in there and say, well, this is a necessity, we won't tax it, and this is, and we won't tax it, and this isn't, it's going to cost you. They just give you back the taxes that were collected from you on your spending up to the poverty level, meaning that you don't take a dime out of your own pocket to pay the fair tax until you've taken care of your family.
That's
feed your family before you feed the government with a fair tax.
Yep.
And we need to probably go back and find that little slide we had of how the poverty level family, the slightly better off family, the middle class, and that one calculated the tax rate, the effective out-of-pocket tax rate for those different people. And it's so the fair tax is not regressive. The fair tax does not hit the poor hard. In fact, if you spend less than the poverty level, your tax rate is negative. You get more back in prebate than you'll pay in tax at the cash register.
Yeah.
So anybody that says the fair tax is regressive and it'll hurt the poor just hasn't done their homework. They do not understand how the fair tax works. They don't understand how the prebate works, and that's just wrong.
And on top of that, I mean, that advantage alone makes the fair tax truly fair. But on top of that, used products are not subject to the fair tax. So when a family who's struggling to get by, first off, they get the prebate, they get their whole paycheck, all right? They're not going to be hammered and so forth. And if they choose to buy a used car, they can legally avoid the fair tax.
Absolutely.
That's a huge benefit, huge benefit.
Now, another thing we hear that the fair tax will get rid of the payroll taxes that currently support Social Security and Medicare, but you'll hear some people say the fair tax is going to kill Social Security and Medicare.
And again, that's wrong, all right? The fair tax will not end Social Security and Medicare. In fact, it'll put them on a more financially sound basis, because right now we fund Social Security and Medicare through the payroll tax, meaning the people who get a paycheck, a certain amount is taken out of their paycheck every week or every 2 weeks or how often they're paid to pay for Social Security and Medicare. People who make investments and people who work under the table and so forth, they're not contributing to Social Security and Medicare,
nope.
Right? But under the fair tax, every time somebody goes to the store and buys something or pays for a service, all right, every time they will be contributing to Social Security and Medicare, because it's written into the bill that a certain percentage, right around 35%, of the proceeds of the fair tax must go to Social Security and Medicare. So every time somebody makes a purchase of a new product or a service in this country, no matter if they're here legally or not, if you get my drift, all right, every time somebody makes such a purchase, Social Security and Medicare is going to be supported. Compare that to what we have now. It's a much better situation.
You expand the tax base from just people working for a paycheck to everyone who buys things, or at least everyone whose spending exceeds the poverty level.
Yep. Okay, what's the next one here? Okay. Oh, this is similar to what we had before. The fair tax is unfair to seniors who have paid their taxes on their savings and are now going to have that money taxed again.
Incorrectamundo. No, the fair tax is not unfair to seniors. People who say that the seniors have paid taxes on their savings, well, a lot of seniors have not paid taxes on their savings if they got 401ks.
That's right. Yeah.
Excuse me again.
That's right. Yep.
If they got 403bs, a lot of seniors have got their retirement plans tax deferred, which means they put pre-tax dollars into them, and the idea was that they would pay tax on it when they take it out.
Right.
Now, if we get rid of the income tax, then you can take your money out of your 401k, out of your 403b, and not pay any taxes on it.
Yeah, for those seniors, all right, think of it. They put their money away pre-tax, okay? And if we pass the fair tax this year and put it into effect next year, they can legally withdraw that money free of any taxation. It's not going to hurt. Plus, all the other benefits we said, all right? Seniors, first off, products are going to decrease in price because the fair tax makes it easier to do business. So prices are not going to go up 23%. They can buy used products and thereby save and not pay the fair tax. They will get the prebate, all right? If it's a couple, like Bob and his wife and my wife and I, all right, we're going to get the prebate and so forth. That will help us out. No, seniors are not going to be hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we mentioned before, the price of everything we buy today has the costs of the income payroll tax system embedded in it. The tax liability, the compliance costs, all of these costs that are imposed upon businesses by the income payroll tax system are rolled into the prices of the products of the goods and services that they produce. So even if you have a Roth IRA or some regular savings account where you paid into it with after-tax dollars and you've already paid taxes on the money you're getting, it's going to be taxed again. Well, it's taxed again now.
Yeah.
You just don't see it.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's a wash whether you pay the embedded cost of the income payroll tax system in the prices of the products and services you buy, or whether you pay the fair tax on them, doesn't matter.
Yeah,
that is a wash. That's it. But I'll tell you what, here's something else you can do. Now, pause for the buzzer here. Mm-hmm. You can't give multi-billion-dollar corporations a free ride. They must pay their fair share.
What is their fair share? Okay, actually, and this is going to really astound some people, corporations' fair share is zero, all right? That's because corporations don't pay taxes.
Some people think their fair share is just, I don't care what they're paying now, it's just more than they're paying now.
Yeah. Some people really believe that corporations have to pay their fair share, but they don't stop to think that taxes, like everything else that a corporation has to deal with, is another expense of doing business. It's like the light bill. It's like the water bill. It's like the rent. It's like the cost of new computers or whatever machinery is required to make their product. All right? It's the cost of labor, and it's the cost of taxes. All right? So the taxes that are levied on corporations get funneled into the cost of their product and service, and then who pays for their products and services?
The end consumer.
That's right. Us.
Yeah, we use this example all the time. People understand quite easily that if you buy a product, that the retail price that you pay for that product includes the cost of the labor and materials that went into making that product.
Yeah.
But it also includes every other cost of doing business that it took to get that product to market. And that includes the truckers that brought it to you, the store that sells it to you, the manufacturer that made it, the distributor that sent it around. There is taxes added all the way through the chain, and you, the final consumer, pays it all in the retail price. It's hidden from you. You don't see it on your receipt, how much of that price is the income tax costs being passed on to you, but it's there. And the fair tax replaces that.
Look at it this way, all right? You are already paying an income tax and a payroll tax, and indirectly, you're paying the corporate tax. You have to look at it that way because that's the reality of the situation, all right? If you want to be vindictive and you think the corporations need to be nailed, remember, the American public, the American consumer is going to pay for it every time. And these people in Congress know that, but they still play the game. Oh, the corporations have to pay their fair share.
Yeah, that's a good vote buying or vote getting phrase.
Yeah,
They count on people not understanding how that works.
Yeah, they do. They do. Yeah, that's bad.
It really does. Let's move on a little bit. We're getting short on time here.
Well, the fair tax is going to create a gigantic black market for untaxed goods.
No. That is not true at all. Let me ask you something. How much of a black market exists to get away from the state sales taxes?
I don't think so.
Now, people are going to continue to shop at Walmart. They're going to continue to shop at their grocery stores. They're going to continue to shop at the established retailers who I guarantee you are not going to avoid charging the fair tax. They get to keep a little bit of it. So if you think you're going to be buying a refrigerator or a washer dryer or something there out of the trunk of somebody's car.
Or groceries.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're going to buy groceries out of the trunk of somebody's car.
Not going to happen. Now, we'll be honest, anytime there's a tax system, there will be those that try to beat it and will try to evade it.
Well,
but if you want to compare evasion under a sales tax, which the fair tax is, and the evasion rate of the income tax, which is worse?
Oh, the income tax.
To think that there's going to be this gigantic black market trying to evade the tax just is not realistic.
Yeah. The evasion of the current income tax is over 20%. In fact, Jade Wally, our CPA friend, says it's closer to 25%. Evasion of a sales tax, history shows, between 1% and 2%. All right, It's very difficult. Plus, all right, well, Bob, what if somebody puts used products on the black market? Then they won't be collecting the fair tax.
You won't be collecting the fair tax on used product sales anyway.
Yeah. So,
all right.
Where's all this black market stuff?
We got time for one more I'm going to throw at you.
Okay, go ahead.
With the fair tax, people will be forming all kinds of dummy businesses so they can buy items for personal use tax-free.
The sales tax, the fair tax, will be collected by the states. Well, let's go back up. It's going to be collected by the vendor. You go to a store, you buy something, the fair tax will be on the receipt. The vendor keeps track of it. All right, their computers keep track of it. They send the fair tax into the state taxing authority, and the state taxing authority sends it on to the feds. Okay, so and it's true that if you form a corporation like you're mowing lawns, okay, you have your own little lawn mowing and landscaping business. Okay, so yeah, the cost of your products, it will be not subject to the fair tax. So is everybody, because I've heard this said, everybody's going to form a corporation. Well, what's happening now at the state level? If somebody forms a corporation for the purpose of dodging the sales tax on items, but they're not showing any income, the state is going to be knocking on their door.
You got to have an occupational license. You've got to register with the State Department of State here in Florida. Anyway, I imagine it's the same way. But yeah, there are lots of ways that if you have a business and you're just not showing any business activity, they will get you.
And you don't want to run afoul of the state taxing authority because they've been doing this for a long time. They know how to handle fraud. So that's not going to happen.
Okay, that was fun. We got about 3.5 minutes left to get our call to action going.
Okay.
Folks, join AFFT, please. I'll ask nice, please. No, the Americans for Fair Taxation. That's what AFFT stands for. That is the national grassroots organization. If you can join the 1040 Club, commit $10.40 a month to help get the fair tax passed, that would be great. If you're in a state, especially like Alabama or Georgia or Nebraska, that is getting or working on a state level consumption tax modeled on the national fair tax, get behind that as well. They could sure use it. And I guarantee you, the first state that enacts a fair tax style consumption tax gets rid of their state income tax like that is going to see a competitive advantage over the rest of the states like you wouldn't believe.
All right. There's a couple of new items in the FAIRtax logo store, fairtaxlogostore.org. All right. We have our very own FAIRtax face mask. Okay. All right. Which fog up my glasses, so I'm not going to. And the new high-tech bumper sticker.
Those are cool.
Yeah, these are really neat. And at the end of the last couple of FAIRtax Power radios, we have a 1.5-minute video that Bob narrated about these things. So take a look at that. I'm not going to take any more time. FAIRtaxlogostore.org.
All right. If you got a newspaper that will publish letters to the editor, most of which will do that, pick one theme. Do not try to explain the entire fair tax in 250 to 300 words. Can't do it. Pick one theme, develop it, send that in, and write letters to the editor. Call your talk shows. Local talk shows are easier to get on. If you want to sit on hold for an hour, you can talk to one of the national talk shows. But that works as well. Help that out. Contact President Trump, whitehouse.gov/contact.
Yeah.
Tell him to get, can you imagine? Because right now, the fair tax is just not even in the conversation. But if the president, regardless of who he is, but especially this one, who's so controversial, that if the president comes out and takes a position on the fair tax, that is going to put it in the national conversation.
Absolutely.
And I guarantee we win that conversation every time. I would hate to be somebody trying to run against the fair tax and as a friend of the IRS and the income tax.
That's right. Yeah. And don't forget PopVox, POPVOX. This is a great website. When you go on, you give it your name and address. They need your address so they know what congressional district you're in. And then you can weigh in on any pending legislation such as HR 25 and tell them, and you can write in there, I support HR 25, the fair tax, and give the reasons. The income tax is un-American.
Yeah, share the videos. FAIRtaxGuys.com is where you can go back and look at them. If you'd like to contact us, thefairtaxguys@gmail.com is our email address, or you can like us on Facebook, leave us something on our Facebook page. And, of course, FAIRtax Power Radio on WTOB in Winston-Salem. If you're out of the range of the over-the-air signal, you can catch that streamed on live. We will be there live on Sunday, July 5th, taking calls and answering questions. Hope that's it.
That's going to be exciting.
It is. And that's going to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. Thank you again for watching and listening. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Molero.
We are the FAIRtax Guys, reminding you once again, as we always do, that the fair tax is the only truly fair tax, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
So tell me how it works.
It's probably changed since the last time I saw it, but the short answer would be, you want to take this one?
Oh, sure. Okay. Imagine bringing home everything you make. You don't get taxed for saving or accumulating wealth, and your boss doesn't get taxed more even if he pays you more.
Wow, now see, that's amazing.
And so the end result of all that is the cost of producing products and running a business goes down, so things cost less. And on top of all that, imagine every criminal, non-citizen, and under-the-table worker also paying taxes.
That's amazing.
That's the fair tax. We tax what you consume as you consume it, and that's it.